Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to today's NHA Today podcast. My name is Cyd Notter. I'm a nutrition educator, author, and coach, and I'm really honored to be your guest host here today with a really special guest. Her name is Dr. Shobha Rayapudi, and I've known Dr. Shobha for several years now, a couple of years, and I've always learned so much from her. And so she is going to share with us today the importance of habits and how our habits there's the missing link between goals and success, and that has to do a lot with our habits and how we can make those habits stick. So, welcome, Dr. Shobha. It is so good to see you.
Thank you so much, Sid. And it's a huge pleasure and an honor to be here with you. And as you said, I was very excited to meet you. And also, it's very inspiring to see the work that you do. And it's such a huge pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. I'm going to tell the audience just a little bit about your background, if I may. Dr. Shobha Rayapudi is a board certified lifestyle medicine doctor, physician, epidemiologist, researcher, chef, and registered yoga and meditation teacher. She's the co founder and wellness director of Gift of Health. That's a not for profit organization based in Newfoundland, Canada, which is dedicated to revolutionizing lives through lifestyle medicine. Through in person and online workshops, she has helped thousands of people struggling with chronic disease to break free from the diseases, decrease dependency on prescription drugs, and have more energy. She also helps stressed out healthcare professionals to be more effective providers who not only enjoy their work, but they also suffer less stress related illness. And I bet habits tie into that as well. Looking forward to hearing about that. So, what inspired your interest in the topic of habits, Dr. Shova?
Thank you for asking that question, Sid. This was quite very personal for me. So, as a doctor, I do want to help people to gain better health, and everybody, they want to be healthy. I mean, we want good health, we want to have better longevity. So, wanting good health is a fact. But transforming this well being goals into daily actionable behavior is an act, is a skill that we need to have. So in the beginning, when I developed few programs to help people to reverse their chronic conditions, what I used to find was while we were there with them, I used to see huge progress. And but later, after that support was gone, I would notice it was very easy for people to fall off the wagon and get back to their previous habits. So that made me question, what is that I can do? And I was also surprised to see a lot of research when scientists employed different behavior changes. What they found was habit formation was the foremost and very successful way of reversing chronic diseases. So let's say even if you tell people or show people how to do the behavior change, or you tell them the health consequences, or tell them how to shape the behavior, it was the habit formation which had 180% return of investment if you teach people how to form habits, and they would be successful. And it's very unlikely that they would again go back to their previous things that they used to do to sabotage their health.
So, is it more like the habits then put us on automatic autopilot? Once we develop good habits, then we no longer have to choose as much as before when we were trying to make better choices. Is that
Yes,
accurate?
you quite got that. So, for example, if I say to myself, I want to exercise, is that a goal or is that a habit?
That sounds like a goal.
Yes, but a lot of people mistake that as an habit. So I want to exercise is the target behavior. is the end goal which I want to get it. And to get to that target behavior or end goal, like I have to divide the process into successful discrete steps that has enforced behavior action for me to get to that end goal. So that's the difference. Most people, they trip in terms of thinking. So whenever they say to themselves, I want to lose weight, I want to exercise, or I want to give up that sugary snacks, what they don't realize is it's the behavior. I mean, it's the target behavior that they want to get to, but it's not a habit. So it's a goal. So even when it comes to goals, so let's say if I have a goal, how likely am I about to perform? There is only 10% chance that you would be successful in performing that if you just have a goal for yourself. But let's say if you have a clear, actionable strategy and consciously commit to doing that, then your chances increase to 25% of success. But let's say if you commit to others, it increases your chance of success. Again, it goes up to 65%. But again, that's not good for us. But let's say if you consciously make an appointment with the person you have committed, then there is 99% chance that you will be successful. For example, let's say if you think you want to exercise, but let's say if you tell your friends and you announce publicly that you are going to exercise and share like some of the exercise that you're doing, you're more likely to do that rather than just saying to yourself that I want to exercise. Better yet, so let's say if you are meeting a coach or if you have a physical trainer and if you're just telling them that you're going to exercise versus you make an appointment with your physical trainer, like who shows up, how likely are you to exercise? So your chances go up, right? So it's it's how we are setting up the environment or how we are making it possible. So that's the key. As I said, like it's the skill that we need to develop to change our well-being goals to our daily behavior action.
That makes total sense. When people have accountability to someone else, I think what, like you said, that really ups the game. When we
Mhm.
know someone's watching and waiting to hear a report from us.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's so true. And one thing is like developing this habit is a skill, and this is something that most people trip as well. So for example, yes, we all know that we want to develop a habit, but how do we develop a habit? But for that, first we have to understand what is a habit. Like habit is something that's not dependent on our emotions, it's not dependent on our feelings. It's a reflex, it's a physical reflex which happens unconsciously when we see a trigger or a cue. For example, when you see a red light, what do? You stop. So that's an unconscious response. Like when you stop at the red light, like there is no feeling associated with it. So like the red light was the trigger and you stopped. So that was that happened unconsciously. So imagine if we can make our health goals unconscious, where we are not relying on our willpower, where we are not relying on our motivation. Like how, I mean, don't you think that that would be so amazing? Like if we are just able to make it unconscious and not rely on our willpower.
Yes, and not dependent on, do I feel like exercising? Well, most of the time I may not feel like it, but if it's a habit, I'm going to naturally do it.
Yes, that is so true. So for example, like when you just said, okay, like do I feel like exercising? So again, when you say to yourself, I want to exercise, it's a goal or a target behavior we want to reach. But let's say when you wake up in the morning, you do few stretches on the bed, or when you wake up in the morning, as soon as you wake up, you get on the floor and do 3 push-ups. Now that's a habit. So, like, how do we get to that stage? So, how do we transform our goal to habit is an interesting phenomenon.
All right. So are there some pre-laid out steps that we can follow, Dr. Shobha, in order to have a habit become ingrained in our brain and in our lives?
Yes. So, as I said, habit is an unconscious response or it is a conditioning, right? Since a child, you have been conditioned that whenever you see a red light, you stop. So that's the conditioning that has happened over the course of time. So, how do we condition ourselves to do certain things? So, let us take exercise, for example. So, if you want to condition yourself to do that, so for that to happen, you, for to condition anything, these 5 things are required. So, first of all, it has to be a physical activity, it has to be an act. So instead of saying to yourself that like I'm not going to exercise, or let me give you an other example. So instead of saying I want to quit smoking or I want to quit dairy, but so when you say I want to quit smoking, it's not an action, it's not a physical action. But when you say I'm going to chew a Nicorette gum, it's an action. When you say, I want to quit dairy, again, it's not an action. But when you say, I'm going to replace or drink plant based milk instead of dairy, then again, that's an action. So, number one criteria is it has to be a physical action that you want to perform, not an action which you want to do less of or not perform at all. The second thing is you want to do it in the increments of 5 or less. You can call that as increments of 1 to 5, because a lot of people, when they think I want to exercise, they say to themselves, okay, I'm going to do 30 minutes of gym. Again, that is not going to help you. But instead, like if you say to yourself, okay, I am going to do 5 push-ups, I'm going to do 3 sit-ups, 3 pull-ups. When you say to yourself, so that is possible. So again, like doing in the increments of 5 or less, you will be more successful in shaping that behavior versus saying to yourself that okay, I am going to do 30 minutes of gym, or I'm going to do 100 push-ups, or I'm going to like walk 10 kilometers. So here, instead, if you say to yourself, I'm going to do 5 push-ups or 3 pull-ups, or I am going to walk 3 blocks. So doing in that increments, it allows you to shape the behavior. The third thing is it's not defined by time. Again, as I said, instead of saying to yourself that I'm going to take 30 minutes, but instead of that, if you just say to yourself that I'm going to do 3 push-ups, 3 sit-ups, it doesn't matter whether it takes 10 minutes for you to do that or whether it takes 3 minutes. So you are not counting the time. It doesn't matter how fast or how slow you are. What it matters is, did you do that 3 pull-ups or 3 push-ups, whichever you wanted to do. So, because if we include time, then that becomes an another measure that we have to keep track of. And when you're trying to keep track of 2 things, it's very difficult. So that's why you want to take the time tracking out of this equation. So you don't define it by time. So that's the third one. And the fourth one is it should not evoke a flight or fight response. Because what happens when your motivation is high, when your willpower is high, you're excited to do that. So let's say what would happen is first few days when you say to yourself, I want to exercise, and when your motivation is high, you do go all in. But one fine day you wake up and you say to yourself, I don't feel like exercising. So that's the fight or flight response we want to avoid. So in order to avoid that, we want this to be such a small increments that we are not even realizing that we are doing that. So to avoid that fight or flight response, so that's why like you're doing in the increments of 5 or less, where you're not taxing yourself, like where you're making it easy for yourself and doing it over the period of time, then that habit is set. So that's the other thing. And the fifth and the final thing is, does it pass the snapshot test? What I mean by that is, if I walk in right now, would I see the person doing what they said they would do? Or are they performing any action that is going to lead to the target behavior that they mentioned? For example, so if a person says, I'm going to exercise 7 a.m. every day, and when I go and look at that person at 7 a.m., is that person in gym clothes? Or is that person stretching or walking? So if they're doing that, they're more likely to do the exercise, right? Versus if I just walk in 7 a.m., they're still in their bed, scrolling their phone. How likely do you think they're going to do exercise? Not right. So in the snapshot test, so you say that you pass the snapshot test when you see that person performing an action. Another example is, let's say if a person says, I want to decrease sugary snacks. So when you open their cupboard, is the cupboard filled with fruits and nuts or healthy alternatives for the sugary snacks? Or is the cupboard still filled with candy wrappers, junk food? So you say that the person has failed the snapshot test if the cupboard is full of junk food, because how likely do you think that person is going to follow or have less sugary snacks if the cupboard is filled with candies and all that, right? So same thing. So it's very simple. So like when you understand the snapshot test, like even if you say to yourself, I'm going to meditate, so when I walk in by 9 p.m., like are you do you have the setup? Do you have your cushions? Do you have you are you ready with your meditation app, or have you put the phone in do not disturb mode? Versus when I walk in and I see you like watching TV or in a conversation on the phone with your friend, how likely are you going to meditate? So these are the examples of snapshot test. So to shape the behavior, we have to have this 5 criteria, like where it's a physical action, we are doing in the increments of 5 or less. We are not defining it by time. We are not evoking the fight or flight response, and it's passing the snapshot test. So this 5 things, when you do it over the course of 5 weeks, you will be amazed to see that you have been conditioned to do that.
With that one step where you said 5 or less, is that something then that would be increased? Like after week 1, you would increase that, the number
Yeah.
of sit-ups and push-ups?
Excellent question. So initially, when you are conditioning that behavior, you're only choosing 5 increments or less for a reason. Because, like, once you become comfortable doing that, once you become comfortable walking 1 block, how easy it's for you to add another block. Or sometimes what you feel is, okay, I'm able to walk 1 block, let me add another block. So, again, the ideal time to add one more is after 5 weeks. So let's say you do this for 5 weeks because you want that to be set. You want that to be ingrained in your daily life. Because one thing we need to remember here is we are here for the long haul. Here we are not doing for a short period of time, or we are not doing only when we have the motivation or willpower. We are doing it so that it becomes unconscious. So after 5 weeks, again you can add like 1 or 2 increments. And what you will find by doing so, what you will find is, without you realizing it, you will be amazed to see that you're performing that action without much effort.
So how long does it take to have a habit actually ingrained in our life, Dr. Shobha? Is that why you're suggesting 5 weeks? Is that a good amount of time?
So, what research shows that it takes almost 66 to 88 days to form a habit. But you can also develop a habit, or you can shorten that time period when you use these principles of behavior shaping. You can actually form it in 6 days when you use this 5 criteria of behavior shaping. So it ranges. Uh, as I said, it can take anywhere from 66 to 88 days. I know people think maybe it just takes 21 days. But if it were just 21 days, don't you think we would have used our grit and determination, do it for 21 days, and it would be so nice to see that that has been ingrained, right? But that doesn't happen that way.
Very good. So is there a difference between breaking a bad habit, right, going to bed really too late, and starting a new habit, or do those work together? Like, does the good habit crowd out the bad habit in some way?
That's that's another amazing question. So, like, we want to do certain things. We want to stay up a little bit late. We want to check our messages. We want to scroll our social media. Whereas you know that, like, you have to go to bed on time, or you know that you have to exercise, you have to eat healthy, even though our brain knows that those are good habits which we want to do. But there is a part of there is a part of brain in us which actually wants to do more dopaminergic activities, which actually gives us more dopamine. So when you're watching that show, it gives you that dopamine. When you're eating that sugary snack, it gives you that dopamine. Versus, like, if you want to go for a healthy snack. So it's this part of the brain that actually controls us, rather than, sometimes we think that we can control the dopaminergic part of the brain, but it's opposite. It's actually the dopamine that controls us. It's not that you controlling the dopamine. So in order to get around that, it's very important we understand dopamine, because dopamine is a neurotransmitter which is involved in our motivation. So it's very important to have that dopamine so that it increases our motivation. So there is a part in our brain called nucleus accumbens, which has this pile of dopamine. And when we do a certain action, it releases that dopamine. And when that dopamine is released, we get pleasure. And then that forms a reinforcing cycle, which tells us it really felt good when you did that. Do it again. So let's say when I ate that pizza, if I got a dopamine hit, what do I do next day? I eat pizza again to get that dopamine hit. So it's very important that we understand this dopamine circuitry in terms of forming a habit. So it is this part of the brain that controls our motivation, but there are also other parts of the brain that influence this dopamine circuitry. For example, our frontal cortex has an influence. Our prefrontal cortex is like a CEO, or or which tells. So that is the part associated with your willpower, which commands. So let's say, even if you are falling down, or if you're sad, or if you're crying, there is a voice in the brain telling you, get together. So just calm down, cool down. So that's our prefrontal cortex telling us to take control of our emotions. So understanding like how different parts of the brain control this dopamine circuit is the key, which we can employ for habit formation. So for example, so I'm sorry, like what was the example you were providing in terms of a certain action that you wanted to perform?
I think I said if I was going to bed too
Going
late.
to bed. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Hmm.
Thank you for reminding me. So let's say if you say to yourself, I want to go to bed on time because I know that that's important for me to have a good restful sleep. Whereas when you watch the show or when you check those social media, it gives a dopamine hit. So how do we change it, or how do we do that, just to understand that? Like, have you seen a lemon like full? So when I take a full lemon, when I squeeze it when it's full, I don't have to squeeze it hard. Just a gentle squeeze is going to get a lot of juice out of it. But let's say as the juice decreases, I have to really squeeze hard. So every day you wake up with certain amount of dopamine. And as the day passes, if you have utilized that dopamine, you don't have much dopamine left. So by the time night comes, you have very little dopamine, or you have run out of your dopamine. And now your brain is seeking that dopamine hit. So here it's looking for that hard squeeze so that it can just squeeze out any remaining dopamine that's left. So watching the TV show or checking your social media is like the hard squeeze. Imagine like when you're tired, when you don't have energy for anything, what do? You just pick up your phone, even though you don't have energy to do anything. It's so easy to pick up the phone and like scroll or check your messages, isn't it? Like even though, and at that time, like if I ask you to cook, or like you won't be able to do that. Why? Because your brain is looking for that dopamine. So in order for you to establish the habit, if you try to perform that action when your dopamine is high, so that's why morning times, so when you have that fresh supply of dopamine in the morning, for example, when you say to yourself, I'm going to exercise, and what you notice is when you exercise, since the lemon is full, or since the dopamine is full, even though the squeeze is gentle, you get a lot of dopamine secretion. So when you exercise, you get the dopamine secretion, and even though you didn't feel like exercising, but after exercise, have you noticed you feel good? And like you are happy that you did the exercise. Why? You are getting that pleasure action because there was that secretion of dopamine, because so there was already a lot of dopamine, and it was very easy to secrete that dopamine. So that's why whenever you're trying to develop a habit or whatever thing it is hard for you to do that in the morning. What you would notice is when you do that slowly, what you would realize is that is actually helping you to set for success. So let's say when you do your exercise in the morning, by the end of the day you will be tired when you have a lot of physical movement and all that. So by the end of the day you will feel like sleeping. Like instead of trying to, even though you want to stay up late, you won't be able to because you're physically tired. So So that's the way to come around it, like understand like where how you can utilize your dopamine circuitry to set yourself up for success.
That's interesting. I did not know that we had like a set amount of dopamine in our brains to that wants to be released. I did not realize that. So, what would you say to someone that has fallen off the track a little bit, but they don't want to give up completely, right? What happens when we veer off the track when we're trying to set a habit?
So when you get off the track, it's the first thing what you can do is that is telling you something rather than feeling yourself, rather than judging yourself, or rather than thinking that you have failed at this. What is this situation telling me? Do I need to learn more about this? Do I need to develop a skill? Do I need to seek help of anybody that would help me to put me back on track? So, because there is a part in us which wants to grow, evolve, dream big, but there is also a part in us which is risk averse, which is fear based, which doubts, thinking that I don't know whether I'll be able to do this. So it's very important to recognize that part of the brain, and if you can put it down on the paper, because like let's say if you say like if you tell yourself, so let's say you want to do it again, but your brain might be, yes, you have thought of it before, you tried it and you failed. That's what your brain will be screaming at you. But instead of that, if you write down like all the fears or all the challenges or all the things that you think why you will not be able to do this certain activity, once you put it on the paper, you will be able to see it for yourself and rationalize yourself. What are the things that don't make sense, and what are the things that you can do or put in place to make yourself successful. So that's the first step. And the second step is to see if you can put this behavior shaping in place. It takes time, but that's the sure short way of or foolproof method of getting successful. So you might be thinking, yes, oh, maybe it might take 5 weeks for me to develop the skill. But once you do that, you will be so happy because then you're not relying on your motivation and willpower. And this is what I have observed with my community members as well. So initially, when I used to do these programs, I just used to do it for 3 days. I used to do in-person program for 3 days. And then what I would notice like 6 months later, like there are people like who are not able to keep up with that. And then what I did is I did a 6 week program. So when I developed that 6 week program, then I was able to see that the success rate was higher because in that 6 week, they were taught the techniques and they had the time to implement that skill and practice that skill to develop that and make it into a habit. And even though after the 6 week, it like compared to the 3 day program, it was very likely that this people sustain that behavior or sustain that activity.
Very good. So it sure sounds like there's a lot of planning involved around creating new habits and mindset shifts as well, right?
So rather than thinking that maybe there is a lot of planning involved, in seeing that you are using the skill power, then willpower would help you reframe that. And coming to the mind shift. So again, like it's all about understanding how your mind works. And it's all about seeing that how can I make my mind do this? Because I know my mind wants to do dopaminergic activity, whereas I know like these are the activities that I want to do. So how can I tell my mind to do what I want instead of doing what my mind wants to do. So it's all about knowing, like getting the clarity, getting the knowledge of how to do it, and then knowing the skills and practicing those skills. And while you're practicing those skills, when you get the support, that is a golden mixture. So when you have those three things in place, having the knowledge, having the skill, and the support, when those three ingredients are there, you are able to sustain that activity for lifelong.
Okay, so we need the knowledge of how to do it, the
Hmm.
skill to do it.
Hmm.
I think all of those are outlined in your 5 steps.
Hmm.
And then community, like support,
The
support.
support, yeah.
Mhm.
So you can also see support as an accountability. As you said, like when you have the accountability, how likely you are to perform that action. So
Mhm.
you can get that accountability either in the form of a coach or a physical trainer or a nutrition coach. So people like who take the help, who take that support, or who go for that accountability are more likely to succeed.
Mhm. I recently read an article, and maybe you could comment on this. It said it was called like to think of your identity, like of who you want to be. Like, I want to be a healthy person, like to incorporate that identity in your mind, or not just I want to lose weight, but I want to be a healthy person, or I am a healthy person, so I'm not going to eat that anymore. Would you say that that plays a part in our mindset as well, Dr. Shobha?
Yes, so if you look at it, Sid, like when it comes to health, it's not only about eating, right? So there are so many factors. So what we eat, how we move, and like how much energy do we spend or how much time do we spend with our loved ones, our social connections, our sleep, avoiding harmful substances. All those factors play a major role for our health. And all these things are different part of the puzzles. What you would notice is, and I usually call this one pillar as the mother of all pillars or mother of all lifestyle pillars, which people don't realize is sleep. Have you noticed, like, if you have slept well, you make better decision the other day, you eat better, you move better. So like it's very important. And let's say even if you are very motivated to eat healthy, if you didn't have a good sleep the previous night, how likely are you to follow that? So, and each of these puzzles play a role. So instead of just saying to yourself, like, I want to eat this way or that way, thinking about your health in a bigger perspective, because all these things play a role. So in like saying to yourself, I want to be healthy, and pick the ones that you are able to do. So for example, even if you think that it's difficult for you to change your eating habits, start with sleep. Or if you think that it is maybe easier to do exercise rather than cooking, start with that. So whatever you feel easy, start with that, and the remaining pieces of the puzzle will fall into place, rather than again trying to do all these things at once. Again, here is where we are all following the thing, like where you don't want to do everything at once. If you say to yourself, I want to sleep well, I want to eat well, I want to exercise, if you want to keep everything in place, it will be very difficult and you will fail. So no matter how motivated you are, there will be a time when you wake up and you say to yourself, I can't do this anymore. So, but instead, if you employ the behavior shaping, or if you employ the 5 steps of conditioning and condition yourself to do that, you will be more successful. So, after you have put one thing under your belt, then you can go for the next activity. So that's how, like, where you are stacking. So even like when I came to know about this plant-based nutrition, I was eating everything under the sun. So even though I was a doctor, I didn't know about plant-based eating. And so one day, like my husband, he just came home, and it was a hard day of work. And after that hard day of work, I came home and I prepared dinner. And when my husband looked at it, he said he didn't want to eat it. I literally felt like choking his neck. What do you mean you don't want to eat it? I have worked so hard to do that. Then he said, "Oh, this has dairy." And then I just blurted out, "What do you mean this has dairy? What's wrong with eating dairy?" And then he was throwing some truth bombs from Forks Over Knives documentary that he watched the previous night. And when I watched that documentary, like I had mixed emotions, in the sense, like I was mad at the same time that I didn't get to learn about this in the medical school. And I was very surprised that you can open up and close the clogged blood vessels just by changing your eating. And when I saw, like, there were doctors who were practicing in a way where they were helping people to reverse chronic diseases, rather than having the patients come every 3 months to refill their medications for their high cholesterol or high blood pressure. Then I said to myself, I want to be a doctor like that. I want to practice in that way. And this is how I want to help my people. Rather than prescribing medications, I want to help them to make the lifestyle change. And another big rock hit me, even though I was so excited to talk about plant based nutrition with everyone I came in contact. I realized that making a lifestyle change is so hard. And that is something that you cannot do in just 15 minutes of your clinic time. You cannot undo a lifetime of habits in just those 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And that's the time I realized that, like, if I want to help this person, I really have to hold their hands and teach them how they can implement, or how they can make this into a habit, so that they are not struggling. So that was a key insight for me. Like, yes, so if I want to help people, I have to teach people like how they can develop this into habits, so that they can reverse their chronic conditions. Because if that is ingrained in their daily life, so if they develop the habit of, okay, even if they want to eat ice cream, if they develop the habit of taking a fruit, freezing it, blending it into an ice cream, and eating the frozen fruit as an ice cream, if they make that as a habit, how likely are they able to reverse their chronic conditions, where they're still not giving up their favorite foods, where they're still enjoying the foods that they are eating, but they have just made that shift in daily behavior action, that is helping them to reverse that chronic condition.
Very interesting. So one of my questions for you was going to be, what's like a very common mistake that you see people make when they're trying to build habits? But I think you answered that. Maybe doing too much at once would be a
Yes.
common mistake.
Yep. I know this was a long-winded answer.
No, very good. Learn so much from you every time I hear you speak. I just learn so very much. So how can people reach you or work with you, Dr. Shobha?
So we have created this not-for-profit organization called Gift of Health. And through Gift of Health, we deliver online programs and in-person programs to help people to make that lifestyle changes. So we have a website which is called giftofhealth.org. So either you can go to that website. We have more than 200 recipes which you can download for free. There are videos which you can watch, and it tells you about like how you can reverse your chronic conditions. So either you can visit our website, and if you are used to social media, so we also have a Gift of Health Facebook page. You can message us through Messenger, and you will be able to contact us through our Facebook as well. And when you go to our Gift of Health website, there is a contact form which you can fill and reach us. And better yet, you can directly reach us by email. So it's giftofhealth1@gmail.com. So you can also email us. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I found your message today to be very hopeful. And I think other people will too, people that have not had success at changing their habits. They probably just did not have the right system in place, right? You've laid out a very comprehensive system that seems easy to follow. And with support, I think people would have much more success with changing their habits. And like you said, it's not always an easy thing to do, but it can be done. We've seen it done many times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, what would be your one takeaway that you are hoping people would take away from this conversation today? If there was something, uh, just one idea that they came away
Mhm.
with today, what would that be?
So I would say people do not decide their future, they decide their habits, and their
Mm,
habits decide their future.
I love that. Thank you, Dr. Shobha. Thank you for being here so much today. It's just always a pleasure to see you. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. Whether you're watching the recording, we're appreciative that you've tuned in today. And hopefully, we'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.
Bye bye.